Hello and welcome to the Financial Wellness Hour. I am your host, Hirsch Serman, and I'm thrilled to have you join us on WGSN-DB, the Going Solo Network. This show is for those wanting to create financial wellness, and believe it or not, your personal finances are not about the money, but rather about the emotions associated with your finances. If we are healthy emotionally, we prepare, if we take care of ourselves, then the better we are prepared, the better and the more sound financial decisions we're going to make. Although we may be fairly general in our discussion today, we'd love to hear from you. You can reach out to me. My website is lifecycle.financial. That's lifecycle.financial. Or you can post on any of the podcast channels that you might be listening to. We'd love to hear from you and make it more relevant. You know, I don't know if you've ever felt like this, but sometimes I feel like I am just stuck in the same old cycle. You want to break out of that cycle, but you really don't know how. And we just keep doing the same thing because, well, I guess that's all we really know how to do. It sounds like a hopeless endeavor, right? But it doesn't have to be. That's the good news. The good thing is that people are creatures of habit. And so we really can identify our patterns and our habits, and we can change them. It takes a lot of work, and sometimes, quite honestly, we need an objective view. We need help from the outside that will actually be able to point some of the things out to us. And we can then work on creating the life we want to live. My guest today can help do exactly that. Debra Alper is a clinician. She's a divorce consultant, relationship strategist with decades of experience helping people, and I love this, make sense of themselves, which I think everybody should be doing. And we shouldn't just be going through life with blinders on. We should really be deliberate in the way we live our lives. Debra has worked with high conflict relationships, emotional abuse, the patterns that continue, whether it's through divorce, beyond divorce, whether you don't even get divorced and you have patterns. There's always things in our lives like that that we should be evaluating, looking at, and seeing how can we live a more fulfilling life. So, Debra, I think this is a great topic. I'm excited for it, and welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much for having me here, Hirsch. I'm really thrilled to be doing this with you.
Yes.
This is a topic that I am very passionate about, so we're going to have a great conversation.
I noticed when we've spoken, you can always tell what somebody's interested in, what really gets them going, because when you hit that topic, the energy just really builds, and that absolutely happens with you. When you talk about what you do, there's a whole level of energy that's added to what you have already. So I'm going to ask just a little bit, if you can give a little bit about your background.
Sure.
Listeners always want to understand, I think, where are people coming from? Where is this passion coming from? So how did you get into this aspect of therapy and consulting?
You know what? Very organically. So for 26 years, I've been working with clients in what I call a boutique practice. I'm not the person that you come to if you have anxiety, if you have depression. You're coming to me because I am a relational therapist and I help you identify the patterns that are keeping you stuck and figure out new ways of going forward. And doing that work led me to create a method of helping people who were stuck in a certain type of relationship, a coercive, controlling, emotionally abusive relationship. And what I kept finding was it was the same, it was kind of like Groundhog's Day, the same kind of people, highly successful, intelligent, articulate, attractive. From the outside, you would never believe that they were stuck. And yet, with all of their intellect, with all of their success, and with all of the knowledge of what they were stuck in, they could not get out. So from that, I developed what is now being trademarked as the Island Method, a framework for relational recovery. And the Island is an acronym, which we can get into later.
Yeah, I
But
definitely
in
want to explore that later, for sure.
and in working with the Island Method, what I found is that clients were able not only to break free of these relationships, but to do something that was lacking that got them into these relationships to begin with. And that is to find a connection back to themselves. So often we bring our relational patterns from our childhood with us, and we model what is taught to us. So if we're taught that love means taking care of somebody else's needs, if we're taught that love is something that comes and goes, we carry those patterns unconsciously. And so in working with the Island Method and working with my clients, oftentimes my clients started moving forward. And when they moved forward, it oftentimes ended up in divorce court. And the problem is, though, the same patterns that exist in the relationship that they were trying to leave exist in the divorce process, the same types of controlling patterns. So I found myself as a therapist trying to figure out, how do I help my clients through the divorce process? And I realized that this was a separate entity of my business, that I needed to create a divorce consulting relational strategy aspect to my business to help those clients once they're in the divorce and the legal process, in terms of watching for the pitfalls that they otherwise might have missed. And that's how this branch of my business came to be.
And I just, there's so much I want to kind of touch on there, and I try to write some or all of it down, but I'm never going to get it all. One of the things you said about is working with people, and you mentioned obviously how it can lead into divorce. This show predominantly focuses on divorce, but not exclusively. But I will say, whatever you're doing, especially in divorce, you use the right professional for the right task.
Yeah.
You know, I joke with my clients, be careful of that question a professional asks you how you're doing, because they're not a therapist, and you spend 15 minutes telling them how horrible
So true.
the soon-to-be ex is, or that the day was miserable, or, you know, you're just happy you were able to get dressed today. Whatever
Yeah.
it is, use the right professional for the right task, and that will help you significantly in a lot of different ways. I do want to get, if we can, a working kind of definition, but patterns, you mentioned about how it leads often into divorce, and the same patterns go through divorce. One of the things that I would venture to say as well is, and this is through observing, not kind of clinical research in any way, but with all the years I've been doing this, I've noticed that as somebody in a controlling relationship, the one who's doing the controlling, as the divorce is getting to the end and, so to speak, closing, and they losing control, they will play more and more games in order to try to grasp onto some kind of control. And sometimes it becomes more intense and worse. So just a heads up, it doesn't mean you shouldn't get divorced. It could be the right thing for you. I'm not a proponent to say everybody should get divorced. You should,
Right.
if you can work it out, of course, it's a lot less stressful to work it out than but the bottom line is, if it is going through divorce, just to be aware of it. And people throw a lot of buzzwords around, and I think often professionals get into these acronyms and buzzwords. We're talking about patterns, right? Kind of like, if we can have a baseline of what to work off of. How would you define a pattern, or what is a pattern when we talk about this?
A pattern is basically an unconscious repetition of something that feels familiar. And familiar oftentimes draws you in, even when it's not good for you. So, because it's familiar, there's a comfort, and I use that word carefully. There's a comfort in being drawn into the same thing over and over again, that is not necessarily healthy for you, but you know it. And it's on an unconscious level that it kind of feels like, this is what I'm supposed to do. So it's becoming conscious of those patterns. It's becoming conscious of not only the abuser's part of, or the controller's part of the pattern, but of your part. What makes you lose your voice? What makes you get quiet? What makes you change your mind,
Right.
and not being able to hold on to your voice? So there's all kinds of layers to understanding. A pattern doesn't just go away because a pattern has to be replaced by something else. And sometimes when you let go of the pattern, there's emptiness on the inside because you don't know what's familiar. This is foreign ground for you. So it's being able to slowly not only identify, but replace as well.
When I think about my pens, and I'm sure that I'm not the only one, I don't really tend to think they go towards the positive actions. They tend to go towards the negative. And it's interesting what you just said. I am very familiar. He's passed away, but he was a gentleman from Tennessee Health Science. Dr. Robert Bowen created what they call family systems, and he dealt a lot with addiction. And he said something very similar to what you said. You have to replace an addiction first with a healthy habit or a healthy action in order for that to take, because if you just remove, whether it's the pattern or in his case, the addiction, the void is going to be filled with something else, and it's probably going to be a negative, that you're going to fill it in with. So it is, again, like I said in the beginning, a little bit more deliberate in how you need to live your life. I also think you touched on this, and I think is very, very accurate, is you almost have to identify what it is in order to have it be actionable to change it. If you are unaware of something, it's just never going to change. It's just going to repeat itself over and over, right?
Correct. 100%. And, that's where the divorce consulting really comes into play, because oftentimes by the time that you're in the legal system, you're functioning at that point on automatic pilot. There's usually anger, there's fear, there's shame, there's really basic emotions that are driving you. And without someone being able to help you understand both your part and your soon-to-be ex's part in terms of how this dynamic is playing out, it can look like chaos. It can look like dysregulation. It can look like going back and forth and changing your mind constantly. It can look like something called reactive abuse, which is after years of being pushed and pushed and pushed, you lose it. And your spouse now gets to sit back and see what I'm dealing with? This is not a rational person. This is why I'm getting divorced. But there's no context to it. A divorce consultant not only can help the client, but can help the lawyer understand what some of these triggers are, what some of the patterns are at play. And they can read through the language of settlement language that can seem very reasonable on the surface, but can be one complete manipulation underneath it.
I think it's, as one partner tends to take control, the other one tends to become like out of control, if that makes sense.
100%.
And I've had people over the years with this show reach out and say, I never realized X, or this was happening to me, or so I'm going to ask, let's talk a little bit about what are the patterns, these repetitive cycles that you see playing out in a divorce, where a divorce consultant can actually help. But I think sometimes just when you and I talk about it and somebody's listening, they go, oh my gosh, I never realized that was happening to me.
Yeah.
So let's cover a couple of these if we can. And I think that can be very helpful for people as well.
Okay, well, I think one of the biggest ones, and a lot of people who are familiar with emotional abuse will know this term. It's an acronym called DARVO. So DARVO stands for you deny, you accuse, and then you reverse the victim and the offender. So what that looks like in a divorce proceeding is that the person that has all of the control is now being asked to give up some of that control. And what that person will do is oftentimes deny the allegations of, I, I was a present parent. What are you talking about? Meanwhile, the parent worked, 100 hours a week, traveled on the weekends, and, there was a definite inequality in terms of the parental responsibilities. So they will deny it.
But in 2017, they did take the kid to the doctor, so they are parent of the year, right?
Right. They went to that softball game. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
You got it. So they'll deny it. Then they're going to accuse the other person. Well, What about the fact that every night you would come home and pour yourself a cocktail and check out? And you think that's being a good parent? So now they're accusing, okay? And then they're going to reverse the victim and the offender, meaning then they become the victim. They become,
Right.
what, you just want to take my children away from me? What kind of a person does that? I don't deserve this. I've worked hard for this family, and this is what you're, this is how the payoff I'm getting. So it's a manipulative pattern that shows up not just obviously in the legal system. It's been in place in that relationship for a long time, but you see it very clearly around custody, around money,
Right.
um, in the divorce proceedings itself. Another one would be shame. Shame and guilt is oftentimes used in divorce. I can't believe that you would put our children, our family, through this battle just because you're being greedy and you want more money. What kind of a person does that? Do you know the humiliation that your children are suffering? Do you know that they call me every night crying, asking when is this going to be over? So you're fighting for your financial future. You're fighting for what is fair and equitable. And again, I'm doing all of this on the premise that you're not being completely unreasonable.
Right.
But it gets turned around, and the pattern of shaming you and guilting you and blaming you for all of it without looking at their part of it, without looking at, well, this whole thing could be over if you would just agree to my reasonable request here. But they fight it and then put it on you in terms of making you the problem. And there's another term for that. It's called blame shifting. And blame shifting goes on constantly
Yeah.
in these relationships.
Right. And I think people need to think through what is their part or how are they behaving. The other thing is this person often, especially if you 10, 20, 30 years, and I've even seen 40 years plus
Yeah.
of people getting divorced, they've learned exactly how to push your buttons. They know what works for them because they've been taking control for that long.
Yeah.
And so I think these are things that we're not aware of, and yet the
Right.
other one is very aware of.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I will bring up, and you touched on this separately, but I think it's important to put them together. We come into a marriage with patterns and biases and
Yes.
expectations. And then we're in a marriage, and whether they are perpetuated or they are changed for that situation, but we almost have these two sets of patterns building on each other.
Yeah.
And so it's something that we need to think about as well. It's certainly from our our experiences as a child and into the marriage. I also sometimes wonder, like, how generational is this? What did my parents experience when they were kids? What did their parents, But
Yeah.
it definitely will play in for sure.
Oh, it plays out
Well.
generationally 100%, Hirsch.
Yeah.
You see it until one person in the generation decides to stop the pattern.
Right.
But otherwise, it's unconscious. And,
Right.
a toxic relationship will always find our attachment wound. And we all have attachment wounds. It gravitates toward it. And two people with attachment wounds find each other's place. They find the sweet spot. And oftentimes, well, that's what my book is about. That's coming out, but that's for later.
Yeah, we'll speak about that after the break. We do
Right.
need to get there, but the other thing is that we need to think about is this is all we know. We haven't had a parallel or a separate life to be able to say, hey, that's normal, this isn't. So to us, this is normal. This
Yeah.
is what happens, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
the other piece to it is sometimes we compare our inner lives to everybody else's outer lives, like
Yeah.
Facebook or, whatever it might be.
Right.
We do got to head to a break. Debra, how can people get in touch with you? And I encourage everyone to. I think there's a lot, even if you're not going through a divorce, you can understand the value of working with someone like Debra. So, Debra, how can people get in touch with you? And then we got to go to
The two easiest ways are through my website, debraalper.com, or follow me on Instagram, Debra Alper _relationships. I'm also on Substack, Debra Alper LCSW. So any of those ways are probably the easiest.
Great. And we will be back after these messages.
Great.
Hello and welcome back to WGSN-DB, the Going Solo Network. I am your host for the Financial Wellness Hour, Hirsch Serman, and you can get in touch with me through my website, lifecycle.financial. We have Debra Alper today joining us on how to break the pattern. Some of them really do need to be broken. So I encourage you to not only listen to the first half again, but keep tuned in to what we're going to talk about. We're going to get some practical ideas and a methodology. I do want to recap. We covered a lot of stuff. I hope I can read my handwriting. We spoke a little bit about what is a pattern and that unconscious, and I think that's so key, is we all know we have patterns and we see them in other people, but how much we don't realize that it's an unconscious thing that we ourselves are doing, I think is very important as well. And we spoke a little bit about some of the patterns that repeat themselves, that we spoke about having the right professional for the task if you're going through a divorce, because part of what we're talking about today is going through divorce, that the patterns of an abuser get worse as they lose control. I want to reiterate that unconscious, because we want to consciously figure out what our unconscious is saying. That's not such an easy thing. And that's, I think, where professional help can come in, somebody who's objective, somebody who knows what to look for, whereas I wouldn't have a clue, right? I'm that cold, heartless CPA, CPFA. I'm not the right professional for you for that. I feel sometimes like I play life coach, which is fine, but definitely I do not have the experience or the know-how to really, really help people. And I did say at the beginning of the show, which is so true, that personal finances are not about the money. And our conversations that we've had, I know that you agree with that. You would say as well, money is really just about the money in a divorce, right? It's a fight about broken dreams, about fear, about scarcity. There's a lot of things that are playing in when you're discussing splitting. How often have people said to you, I know people say it to me all the time, am I going to be okay financially?
That's all the time. Money, you're 100% right. It's so much bigger than just the dollar amount.
Right.
It's really about the feelings of safety, the feelings of how am I going to do this? And when you have a relationship that's imbalanced, in which one partner took the financial control and the other partner took more of the child role, and I don't say that disrespectfully, but oftentimes in coercively controlling relationships, one person takes all of the financial responsibility and does so not out of the kindness of their heart, but does so as a way of really controlling what you know, what you have access to.
Right.
And that's why it's so important. You talk about being in the right lane for divorce. People need you, Hirsch. I mean, they need somebody who understands what money is and what financial strategy is, taking the emotion out of it. But my job is to help them realize the emotion that's being played out while the fight is going on. Your job is to help them for the rest of their lives.
It's amazing to me that how many people will apologize. I know I should know more about the finances. I know
Right.
I should know all the accounts. I know. And I say, are you taking credit for all the things that you did do in that relationship? Because we don't both sit and cook and both sit and bath the kid and both,
Right.
pay the bills and both. We tend to split them. It's much more efficient to do it that way. Well, that person, as you said, through a controlling gesture, not a love and I'll take the hard part,
Right.
took the ways that they could control you. Can't really control somebody by giving a bath to the kid, right? But you certainly
Correct.
can by managing the finances. So,
Yeah. 100%.
so what happens to someone's self or sense
Mm.
of self after they have been controlled? They've been kind of kept in the dark financially. They are never allowed to build real relationships or confidence or no, the people you want to be friends with, though, I don't want to be friends. We can't be friends with them, right? It's going to be the people I am because I know there's going to be allegiance to me. So it could be emotional, it could be financial. I will say when you're going through a divorce, a lot of the emotional components have a financial undertone, but during the relationship, especially, how does this all play emotionally and financially?
Well, what basically happens is that when you're in these types of relationships, your focus goes from being internally focused to being externally focused. You become a weather forecaster. You're constantly reading the temperature of the room.
Yeah.
Um, and it's not your own temperature. You're looking at your partner. What kind of mood are they in? What's the tone of voice? What's the body language? How do I avoid the blow up tonight? How do I keep things smooth? And in being groomed to exist in that type of a relationship, little by little, you lose connection with yourself. You lose your voice. You lose your instincts. You lose your ability to trust yourself. And that really is the most devastating part of these types of relationships. So by the time that you are in the legal system, you're a shell of a person. You are so not up to fighting for the fight of your life. You are terrified and you don't know the person that was basically occupying your sense of who you were is now fighting you and you're left like a vacuum. You're left empty. And it's the rebuilding of that that really is pivotal as the divorce is going on and most certainly in the aftermath of it. But that's what when you lose your sense of self, that's what it looks like. And the good news is that you can get it back. I mean,
I agree.
it's there.
I'm thinking of a particular client. I worked with her for almost 2 years. It was a decently long, it was pretty drawn out, and it was not easy, but slowly she really started to find her voice again.
Yeah.
And I remember saying to her at the end of one of our sessions, I said to her, every morning when you wake up, I want you to look in a mirror and not say, I want you to roar, I've got this. And she laughed and smiled and she thought it was very funny. And I said, no, I'm actually this time being
You're
serious.
serious. That's
And
amazing because Hirsch, I want you to know in my book, one of the exercises that I have in the appendix is called the mirror exercise. So
oh,
I mean,
that's
we
so funny.
haven't talked about this.
No, we
So
have not. This is
yeah,
so,
that's very
but
funny.
I love because she actually, the next time we said it, she said, I didn't do it every day, but I've started doing it. And she said, you'd be amazed at how much power I feel I get when I say that and look at myself and I just smile at myself.
I love
I thought that
that.
was amazing. That to me was enormous growth. I think
Yeah.
sometimes beyond what I helped her a lot on the financial side, but
Yeah.
and we've teased the audience enough. Let's talk a little bit about this island method. How do you use it? How do you teach it? And how do people benefit from it?
Okay, well, first of all, the island method is a method that is being trademarked, and I started teaching it to clinicians right now. But the method is the foundation of my book, which is Undertow, the Island Method for Breaking Free from Love Addiction. And what the book does is it takes you through something that I call the tide cycle. So undertow, tide,
Yeah,
island, we've got the general feel here. The tide is the things that disconnect you from yourself. So it's what brings you into these relationships to begin with. The thrill of attraction, intensity mistaken for intimacy, distortion and doubt, and emotional dependence. All of those factors are addressed in the front of the book. The middle of the book is once you're able to understand how you've been taken out from yourself, how
yeah.
you're now adrift in the middle of the ocean, feeling like you're going to drown. The island method is a way to getting back to yourself. And the island is an acronym. Basically, you're identifying what's happening in the relationship, you're standing up for it, you're announcing to yourself, to your partner, and to the rest of the world what is happening. You're negating the behaviors that are no longer acceptable to you. And then you're demonstrating new relational techniques that you learn through the course of the book, which then is the third part of the book, how to basically come home to yourself again, to get back to the island. You are your own island. You are your own safe
I love
place.
that. And I got to say there's two things. One, I think when people are going through such an emotional time in their life, they need that kind of logical structure to work through. It's hard for them sometimes to really create a structure for themselves. So I love that you've done that. I also love, I don't know if you intended this in any way, but so often people going through a divorce feel like they are an island and so isolated from the rest of the world. And
Yeah.
so I love just even the way that that worked out for you as well
Yeah.
with that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, no,
Now, I'm
that's
I'm very excited about it. And the book is not written for clinicians. The book is written for you, for me, for well, not me because well, why not me.
yeah,
But it's written for the everyday person. And
right.
it's written for someone, it's filled with case studies that are very, very relatable. It's not a clinical how-to manual. It
I love
feels
that.
very intimate and hopefully very accessible to someone to pick it up.
And you can get it at debraalper.com. I know on
Yes.
the tabs there's the one that actually says book. Just click
Yep.
there, go through.
Yeah.
And that's also how you can get a hold of Debra. So
Yeah.
again, debraalper.com. Any 30-second closing that you want to say before we wrap up? Because we do have to wrap up.
You know what? There is another way that you can do this. If you are feeling stuck, if you are feeling, like I said before, that you're reliving Groundhog's Day over and over again, there's a way that you can connect to yourself, become conscious, and illuminate the patterns that are keeping you from living the best life that you can live.
And I agree with that. I think you certainly can. I wrote a blog on it about how life can be so much better. Thank you, Debra, for shedding light on. I think emotions are very difficult to describe, very difficult to kind of reach people to help them understand and give them structure around how to change it. And that's exactly what you've done in your book. So I encourage people not only to go to the website, debraalper.com, but to go and get a copy of the book. I am Hirsch Serman, your host for the Financial Wellness Hour. Please reach me through my website, lifecycle.financial. Again, that's lifecycle.financial. I want to thank CC Schatz, my producer, as always, for just making it amazingly simple for Debra and I to have a conversation and learn from each other. And I look forward to you joining me on my next show. Have a great week, and please reach out to myself or to Debra with anything that you might have questions about. Thank you.